a fortune that could buy nations, a name whispered in marble halls, and 3 nights that would shatter every rule of the Gilded Age. This is the story of forbidden love, impossible choices, and a scandal that New York society would never forget. In 1889, New York City was divided by an invisible wall, more impenetrable than steel. On one side, the Vanderbilts ruled from their Fifth Avenue palaces. On the other, immigrants fought for survival in crowded tenements. When these 2 worlds collided during 3 fateful nights, nothing would ever be the same. What you're about to hear is a story of passion that defied an empire, courage that challenged tradition, and love that refused to be silenced. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another emotional story, and comment below telling us where you're watching from. Now, let the journey begin. The morning sun cast golden light through the towering windows of the Vanderbilt mansion on Fifth Avenue. Inside, 28-year-old Harrison Vanderbilt stood before an enormous mirror while his valet adjusted his silk cravat. His reflection showed a man sculpted by privilege, sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, dark hair, perfectly groomed. But those eyes held something his family would never understand: emptiness. "Master Harrison, your father expects you in the library in 15 minutes, the valet announced, with practiced deference. Harrison nodded without speaking. Another morning, another business meeting, another day, mapped out by family obligation and social expectation. He was the 3rd son of Cornelius Vanderbilt II, which meant he lived in a peculiar purgatory. Important enough to bear the family name, but not important enough to inherit the railroad empire. His eldest brother would get the business. His second brother would get the political connections. Harrison would get whatever scraps remained. The Vanderbilt mansion was a monument to excess. 70 rooms filled with European art, French furniture, and Italian marble. Servants moved through hallways like ghosts, silent and efficient. Every surface gleamed. Every flower arrangement was perfect. Every moment was orchestrated. Harrison had grown up in this gilded cage, and with each passing year, the bars felt tighter. He descended the grand staircase, his footsteps echoing on marble imported from Carrara. Oil paintings of stern ancestors watched his progress. Men who had built empires. Women who had married strategically. All of them trapped forever in their golden frames, just as he was trapped in his golden life. "Ah, Harrison," punctual as always. His father's voice boomed from the library doorway. Cornelius Vanderbilt II was a mountain of a man, with a white beard and eyes that calculated profit in every glance. "Come, we have much to discuss." The library smelled of leather, tobacco, and old money. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held books nobody read, collected for display rather than knowledge. His father settled into a throne-like chair behind an enormous mahogany desk. "The Astor ball is in 3 weeks, his father began without preamble. "Caroline Astor will be there. So will her daughter, Margaret. 22 years old. Excellent bloodline. Substantial dowry. Your mother and I have arranged for you to escort her." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Father, I've told you. What you've told me is irrelevant." His father's hand slammed on the desk. "You are 28 years old. Your brothers are already married. The family expects you to fulfill your duty. Margaret Astor is a suitable match. This discussion is over." Harrison stood, his hands clenched at his sides. "May I be excused?" "You may, and Harrison." His father's voice softened slightly. "I know you find our world constraining, but it is the world that built everything you see around you, everything you are. Don't throw that away for romantic foolishness." Outside the library, Harrison leaned against the cool marble wall. His heart pounded. The mansion felt smaller than ever, as if the walls were closing in. He needed air. He needed escape. He needed something he couldn't name. That afternoon, against his better judgment, and without informing the household staff, Harrison did something he had never done before. He left the mansion alone. No carriage, no driver, no valet trailing 3 steps behind. He simply walked out the servants' entrance and into the streets of New York. The contrast was immediate and jarring. Fifth Avenue's pristine sidewalks gave way to crowded, dirty streets, the smell of horse manure mixed with cooking food and unwashed bodies. Pushcarts lined the curbs. Vendors shouted in a dozen different languages. Children in threadbare clothes played in gutters. This was the New York his family pretended didn't exist. Harrison walked south, drawn by curiosity and a desperate need to feel something real. He loosened his cravat, removed his top hat, tried to blend in, though his expensive suit marked him as clearly as a beacon. People stared, some with curiosity, others with undisguised resentment. He found himself in the Lower East Side, where tenement buildings rose like dirty cliffs. Laundry hung between windows. The sounds of life, crying babies, arguing couples, laughing children, spilled into the streets. This was chaos. This was messy. This was alive. "Watch yourself, mister!" A young woman's voice cut through his thoughts. Harrison stumbled backward as a bucket of water splashed onto the cobblestones exactly where he'd been standing. He looked up to see a woman on a third-floor fire escape, empty bucket in hand. She was perhaps 24 or 25, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, olive skin that spoke of Mediterranean heritage, and eyes the color of burnt amber. She wore a plain grey dress, patched and mended, but somehow she carried herself with a dignity that transcended her circumstances. "I apologize," she called down in accented English. "I didn't see you there." "No harm done," Harrison replied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded despite his racing heart. The woman studied him with open curiosity. Her gaze took in his fine clothes, his polished shoes, his soft hands that had never known real work. "You're far from Fifth Avenue, aren't you? Is it that obvious?" A blind man could tell, but she smiled as she said it. And the smile transformed her entire face. "This neighborhood isn't safe for gentlemen like you. The boys around here, they see those gold cufflinks, and they start thinking about how to eat this week." Harrison glanced at his wrists. He'd never thought of his cufflinks as anything but ordinary. "Thank you for the warning, miss. Elena Russo." She hesitated, then added, "And you should go home now, before it gets dark." But Harrison didn't move. He couldn't. Something about this woman, this moment, this place had awakened something in him. A curiosity, a hunger, a desperate need to know more. "Do you live here?" he asked, gesturing at the tenement. "With my family. We came from Italy 6 years ago. My father works at the docks. My mother does piecework sewing. My younger sisters—" She stopped abruptly as if realizing she was sharing too much with a stranger. "Why am I telling you this?" "Because I asked? Because you look like you've never heard a real story in your life." Elena leaned on the fire escape railing. "What brings a Vanderbilt to our neighborhood? Slumming?" Harrison flinched at the accuracy of her guess. "How did you—" "I work as a seamstress at a shop on 23rd Street. I've seen your family's portraits in the society pages. You're Harrison Vanderbilt, the third son, the one who's not engaged yet." She tilted her head. Running away from something? The directness of her question caught him off guard. In his world, people spoke in coded language, hidden meanings, polite deflections. This woman asked exactly what she wanted to know. "Maybe," he admitted, "or running towards something. I'm not sure yet." A church bell tolled in the distance. 6 o'clock. Elena straightened. "I need to go inside. My mother will worry. And you—" She pointed north. "Go home before someone decides you're worth robbing." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Vanderbilt, if you really want to understand this city, don't just walk through it like a tourist. Actually see it. See us. We're not just scenery for your afternoon adventure." Then she was gone, disappearing through a window into the dark interior of the tenement. Harrison stood on the street for a long moment, staring up at the building. Around him, the neighborhood continued its evening rhythm. Mothers called children inside. Men trudged home from work. Lamplighters began their rounds. Harrison touched his chest, where his heart continued to beat faster than it should. In 28 years of life, surrounded by the most beautiful, accomplished women in New York society, he had never felt this pull, this recognition, this sense that his entire life had been leading to this exact moment on a dirty street in the Lower East Side. He walked home slowly, taking in everything, the faces, the sounds, the smells. When he finally reached the mansion, the butler opened the door with barely concealed relief. "Master Harrison, your mother has been asking after you." "Tell her I went for a walk." "A walk, sir?" The butler's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Yes, a walk. Is that so unusual?" The butler said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Yes, it was unusual. Everything Harrison had done that afternoon was unusual, and as he climbed the stairs to his room, he knew with absolute certainty that his life had just changed forever. That night, lying in his bed with its imported Egyptian cotton sheets, Harrison couldn't sleep. He kept seeing amber eyes and a smile that held both warmth and challenge. He kept hearing accented English, speaking truths his own world never dared to voice. He kept feeling the pull of something real in a life that had always felt like an elaborate performance. 3 weeks until the Astor Ball. 3 weeks until his family expected him to court Margaret Astor and fulfill his dynastic duty. But all Harrison could think about was a woman on a fire escape who had seen through his expensive clothes to something deeper. He didn't know her last name was Russo. He didn't know she supported her entire family with her seamstress wages. He didn't know that her father had died in a dock accident 2 months ago, leaving her as the sole provider. He didn't know that she spent her evenings teaching her younger sisters to read by candlelight. All he knew was that he had to see her again, had to know if that connection was real or imagined, had to understand why 5 minutes with a stranger felt more genuine than 28 years in his own life. Outside his window, New York City sparkled with electric lights, a modern marvel his family's money had helped finance. But Harrison wasn't looking at the lights. He was looking south, toward the Lower East Side, toward a world he'd been taught to ignore, toward a woman who had challenged him with nothing but honest words and knowing eyes. The Gilded Age was built on invisible walls, walls of class, tradition, expectation, and blood. Harrison had lived his entire life on one side of those walls. But now, for the first time, he wanted to see what lay on the other side. He had no idea that his curiosity would lead to scandal, no idea that 3 nights could change everything, no idea that love could be both the most beautiful and most dangerous force in the world. But he would learn, starting tomorrow, when he would return to that street, that building, that fire escape, when he would see Elena Russo again and begin a journey that would shake the foundations of New York society. The first night was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. Harrison returned to the Lower East Side the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each time he found excuses to leave the mansion, business meetings that didn't exist, social calls that were fabrications, walks that stretched longer than any walk should. His family noticed but said nothing, assuming he was finally sowing wild oats before settling into marriage. They had no idea. On his 4th visit, he found Elena sitting on the front stoop of her tenement building, mending a dress by the fading afternoon light. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, needle flashing silver in the sun. She looked up as his shadow fell across her work. You again. Not a question, not quite a welcome. Just acknowledgement. Me again. Harrison removed his hat. May I sit? Eleanor gestured to the steps without looking up from her sewing. Free country. Though sitting on tenement steps might wrinkle that expensive suit. I'll risk it. He sat, careful to maintain a respectable distance. Up close, he could see details he'd missed before, the calluses on her fingers, the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of exhausted nights, the way she held herself with rigid control, as if relaxation were a luxury she couldn't afford. They sat in silence for several minutes. Around them, the street buzzed with activity. Children played stickball, women gossiped on stoops, men gathered on corners, smoking and talking in rapid Italian. Harrison felt conspicuously out of place, yet somehow more comfortable than he ever felt at society parties. "Why do you keep coming back?" Elena finally asked, still focused on her sewing. "I don't know." "That's a lie." Harrison laughed, startled by her directness. "You're right, I do know, or I think I know. This place, it feels real in a way my life doesn't." "Real?" Elena set down her sewing and looked at him directly. "You want real? My father died 2 months ago, crushed by falling cargo at the docks. The company gave us $20 and told us to be grateful. Now I work 14 hours a day to keep my family fed. My mother cries herself to sleep every night. My 10-year-old sister had to quit school to work in a factory. That's real, Mr. Vanderbilt." "Is that what you came here to find?" The words hit Harrison like physical blows. His throat tightened. I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. Men like you never know. You walk through our neighborhoods like they're zoos, looking at the exotic poor people, feeling briefly adventurous before you go back to your mansions." Elena picked up her sewing again, but her hands trembled slightly. "I shouldn't have said that. You've been nothing but polite. I'm just tired." "No." Harrison leaned forward. "You're right. I have been treating this like an adventure, like my life was boring, so I decided to find entertainment in someone else's struggle. That's despicable." Elena studied him with those amber eyes, searching for sincerity. Whatever she saw made her shoulders relax fractionally. Most men would have defended themselves, made excuses. You didn't. "I have no defense. I'm exactly what you said I am, a man who's never faced real hardship, looking for something. Meaning, maybe. Purpose. I don't know." Harrison ran his hand through his hair, disturbing its perfect styling. "My father wants me to marry Margaret Astor. My mother has already planned the wedding. My entire life is mapped out in social obligations and business dinners and maintaining appearances, and I wake up every morning feeling like I'm suffocating." "Poor rich boy," Elena said, but her tone held more understanding than mockery. "At least you have choices. I would love the luxury of feeling suffocated by too many opportunities." "You're right, again." Harrison smiled ruefully. "You're very good at being right. It's my most annoying quality. Ask my sisters." Eleanor set aside her sewing completely. "Look, Mr. Vanderbilt, Harrison, please, Harrison." She tested the name, and something in the way she said it made his pulse quicken. "You seem like a decent person, but you and we live in different worlds. You coming here, it can't lead anywhere good. For either of us, but especially for me." "Why especially for you?" Eleanor gestured at the tenement, the street, the entire neighborhood. "Because I have everything to lose. My reputation is all I have. If people think I'm involved with a wealthy man, they'll assume I'm his mistress. I'll lose my job at the dress shop. My family will be shamed. We might have to move, and moving costs money we don't have. You think you're looking for something real? This is real. The consequences of your actions matter here." The truth of her words settled over Harrison like a weight. He had been selfish, thoughtless, so focused on his own needs that he hadn't considered how his presence might affect her. It was another symptom of his privilege, the ability to take risks because he had a safety net. She had no such luxury. "You're right." He stood, brushing off his pants. "I apologize for bothering you. I'll go." He had taken 3 steps when Elena's voice stopped him. "Wait." He turned. She was standing now, the mending forgotten on the steps. "There's a church social tomorrow night at St. Anthony's, 2 blocks south. Nothing fancy, just music, dancing, food. People from the neighborhood." She bit her lip, as if fighting with herself. "If you came, if you dressed more simply, Maybe you could see real life without causing problems for anyone, just as an observer. Harrison's heart leapt. You want me to come? I'm saying if you're genuinely curious about how we live, that would be a safe way to learn. That's all. But the way she avoided his eyes suggested it wasn't quite all. What time? 7 o'clock. And Harrison? She finally met his gaze. Don't wear anything expensive, and don't tell anyone your real name. Here, you're just Harry, a clerk from uptown. Can you manage that? I can manage that. Elena nodded once, then grabbed her sewing and disappeared into the tenement. Harrison stood on the street grinning like a fool. A church social. He'd attended 100 society balls, each more lavish than the last. He'd dined with senators and railroad barons. He'd visited European palaces, but nothing had ever made him this excited. That night, he barely slept. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. His mother commented on his distracted air at breakfast. His father reprimanded him for poor attention during a business discussion. His brother asked if he was feeling ill. Harrison deflected them all with practiced ease, all while counting the hours until 7 o'clock. He dressed carefully in his simplest suit, though even his simplest suit was finer than anything most working men owned. He removed his gold cufflinks, his monogrammed handkerchief, his family signet ring. He mussed his hair deliberately. Looking in the mirror, he almost didn't recognize himself. Good, that was the point. St. Anthony's Church was a modest brick building wedged between tenements. Harrison could hear music and laughter from a block away. His palms sweated, his heart raced. He felt more nervous than before any society event he'd ever attended. The church basement was packed with people. Paper lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting warm yellow light. A small band, accordion, violin and guitar, played lively music in the corner. Long tables held simple food, bread, cheese, fruit and wine. People danced, talked and laughed with an ease Harrison had never witnessed at formal gatherings. He stood in the doorway, suddenly paralyzed by uncertainty. He didn't belong here. Everyone would know. They would see through his disguise in seconds. This was a mistake. You came. Elena appeared at his elbow, and the relief that flooded through him was almost embarrassing in its intensity. She wore a simple blue dress, probably her best dress, though it would have been considered shabby by Fifth Avenue standards. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the elegant line of her neck. She looked beautiful. I came, he confirmed, his voice rougher than intended. Good. Now remember, you're Harry, a clerk. You work at a shipping office. You're here because my cousin Maria invited you. Got it? Got it. Elena linked her arm through his, a casual gesture that sent electricity through his entire body, and led him into the crowd. She introduced him to a dizzying array of people, the Benedettis, the Lombardis, the Russos, her extended family, the Costellos. Everyone spoke quickly, often mixing English and Italian. Harrison smiled and nodded and tried desperately to remember names. The music shifted to a waltz. Couples paired off and began dancing. Elena turned to him expectantly. I should warn you, Harrison said. I've had about 1,000 dancing lessons. I might be too formal. Then I'll step on your feet until you loosen up. She placed her hand in his. And Harrison felt the calluses he'd noticed before. Working hands, honest hands, beautiful hands. They moved onto the makeshift dance floor, and Harrison tried to lead as he'd been taught. But Elena was right. His formal training was too rigid for this casual setting. She laughed when he executed a perfect but overly elaborate turn. Harry, this isn't the opera. Just move with the music. So he did. He let go of his training, his posture, his careful control. He just moved, and something magical happened. Their bodies found a rhythm together, not the precise, measured steps of ballroom dancing, but something more intuitive, more real. Better, Elena murmured, and he felt her relax in his arms. They danced through 3 songs. Harrison was acutely aware of every point of contact, her hand in his, her waist beneath his palm, the occasional brush of her dress against his legs. The basement was warm and crowded, but he had never felt more comfortable. When the music finally paused for the band's break, Eleanor led him outside for air. They stood in the small courtyard behind the church, where other couples had gathered to cool off. Stars were visible overhead, a rare sight in the city. "You did well in there," Elena said. "Nobody suspected. Is that why you invited me? To prove I could blend in?" "Maybe, or maybe." She trailed off, looking up at the stars rather than at him. "Maybe what? Maybe I wanted to see if you were serious, about wanting something real." She turned to face him, and in the moonlight her eyes looked almost gold. "Most rich men who come to our neighborhood, they want something they can take, a thrill, a conquest. Then they leave and forget we exist. But you, I don't know. You seem different. Or maybe I'm just being foolish." "You're not foolish." Harrison stepped closer, drawn by an irresistible pull. "Eleanor, I've been to 1,000 parties. I've met thousands of people, and I've never felt as alive as I do right now, standing in this courtyard with you." "Harrison." His name was barely a whisper. "I know this is complicated. I know we come from different worlds. I know there are 100 reasons this is a bad idea. But I also know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment I saw you on that fire escape. Tell me you don't feel this too." Elena's breath caught. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, "I feel it. God help me, I feel it. But feeling something doesn't make it right, doesn't make it possible." "Why not?" "Because..." She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. "Because you're a Vanderbilt, and I'm a seamstress. Because you're going to marry Margaret Astor, and I'm going to marry Antonio Lombardi. He's a good man, a baker, and my mother has been hinting at a match for months. Because this, whatever this is, it's just a beautiful moment that will end when reality intrudes. And reality always intrudes. What if it doesn't have to? What if..." "There is no what if." Elena's voice was firm, but Harrison saw tears glinting in her eyes. "Go home, Harrison. Go back to Fifth Avenue and your mansion and your destiny. Forget about the seamstress you met in the Lower East Side. Forget this night. Forget me." She turned to walk away. Harrison grabbed her hand without thinking. She stopped, but didn't turn around. "I can't forget you," he said quietly. "I've tried. It doesn't work." "Then try harder." But she squeezed his hand before pulling away and walking back into the church. Harrison stood alone in the courtyard, his heart pounding. Around him, other couples talked and laughed, oblivious to the drama unfolding. He should leave, should go home, should heed Elena's warning and end this before it became something more complicated. Instead, he walked back into the church, found Elena standing with a group of young women near the food tables. Waited until she glanced in his direction. And when she did, he held her gaze for a long, charged moment that said everything words couldn't. Whatever this was between them, it wasn't ending tonight. They both knew it. The band started playing again. A young man approached Elena and asked her to dance. She accepted with a polite smile. Harrison watched them move across the floor, jealousy burning in his chest. A new sensation for someone who'd never cared enough to feel possessive. An older woman appeared at his shoulder. "You're the clerk Maria invited, yes?" "Yes, ma'am." "You dance well. Better than most men here." She studied him with knowing eyes. "But you watch Elena like she's the only person in the room. Be careful, young man. She's had enough heartbreak. Her family needs stability, not drama." "I don't want to cause heartbreak." "Nobody ever does. It happens anyway." The woman, Elena's mother, he realized, patted his arm. "She's a good girl. Too good for most men, including wealthy ones pretending to be clerks." Harrison froze. Please. I've been a seamstress for 30 years. I know quality fabric when I see it. That simple suit probably cost more than my husband made in 6 months. But she wasn't angry, just tired, resigned. "Go home, Mr. Vanderbilt, before someone gets hurt." She walked away, leaving Harrison standing there, exposed. If Elena's mother knew, how long before others figured it out? How long before his presence here caused exactly the kind of damage Elena had warned about? He should leave. Right now. Walk out and never come back. It was the only responsible choice, the only decent thing to do. But when the song ended and Elena crossed the room to him, her face flushed from dancing, her eyes bright with something between fear and hope, Harrison knew he wasn't leaving. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. "One more dance?" she asked, even though it was clearly a terrible idea. "One more dance," he agreed, even though he knew it was really so much more than that. They moved onto the floor as the band began a slow, sweet melody. Harrison pulled Elena closer than was strictly proper. She didn't pull away. They swayed together, not really dancing, just existing in their own bubble while the world continued around them. "This is the first night," Elena whispered against his shoulder. "The first night of what? Of something that's going to end badly. I can feel it, but I can't seem to stop it. Maybe it doesn't have to end badly. Everything ends badly when people like us dare to want something we're not supposed to have." She pulled back to look at him. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe 3 perfect nights are worth whatever comes after." 3 nights? 3 nights. That's what I'm giving us. Tonight, 1 more night, and a final night. 3 chances to have something beautiful before reality crushes it. Can you live with that? Harrison knew the reasonable answer was no, knew he should end this now, walk away, protect them both from inevitable heartbreak. But looking into Elena's amber eyes, feeling her heart beat against his chest, he found he couldn't say no, couldn't walk away, couldn't do the reasonable, responsible thing. 3 nights, he agreed, sealing a pact that would change both their lives forever. Neither of them knew that those 3 nights would lead to the biggest scandal New York society had ever seen. Neither of them knew that love could be both salvation and destruction. Neither of them knew that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is exactly what your heart demands. But they would learn, starting with the second night, which was already taking shape in both their minds, a night that would deepen their connection and heighten the stakes of their impossible romance. The music played on. They danced. And somewhere in the back of the church, Elena's mother watched with tears in her eyes, knowing exactly how this story would unfold and unable to stop it. The first night was ending. The second was coming, and with it, the point of no return. The second night came 3 days later. Harrison had tried to stay away, tried to focus on family obligations and business meetings and preparations for the inevitable engagement to Margaret Astor. But every moment he spent in his gilded world felt like a lie, like he was sleepwalking through someone else's life. On the 3rd day, he broke, sent a carefully worded note via a trusted messenger. "Tomorrow night." Where? Elena's reply came back within hours. The old ferry terminal, Pier 42, 10 o'clock, come alone. Harrison had never been good at sneaking out. His life had never required it. But that night, after his family retired to their respective rooms, he slipped out through the servants' entrance, dressed in borrowed clothes from his valet's closet. He walked through the dark streets of Manhattan, moving from the electric-lit luxury of Fifth Avenue to the shadowy industrial waterfront. Pier 42 was abandoned, scheduled for demolition. Wooden planks creaked under his feet as he walked onto the dock. The Hudson River stretched black and vast to his right, reflecting pinpricks of light from New Jersey. The smell of salt water and tar filled the air. You came. Elena stepped from the shadows of an old warehouse. She wore a dark cloak over her dress, hood pulled up against the November chill. You doubted I would. Part of me hoped you wouldn't. Would have been safer for both of us. She moved closer, and even in the dim light, Harrison could see the conflict on her face. This is insane, you know. If anyone sees us, no one will see us. It's past 10 o'clock. The waterfront is empty. The waterfront is never truly empty. Dock workers, night watchmen, thieves. But she didn't leave. Didn't pull away when Harrison took her hand. I've been thinking. he said quietly. About what you said. 3 nights. I understand why you chose that number. 3 is safe, 3 is limited, 3 is an ending before we get too deep. Smart man. But what if we're already too deep? Harrison pulled her closer. I can't eat, can't sleep, can't focus on anything except the memory of dancing with you, the way you looked at me, the way I felt. Finally feeling something real after 28 years of performing my life. Elena's hands came up to rest on his chest. Harrison, you're describing infatuation, novelty, the thrill of something forbidden. It will pass. Will it? Is that what you're feeling? Novelty? She was silent for a long moment. The river lapped against the pier. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn blew. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the water. No, it's not novelty, it's terrifying. Because I know how this ends. I know that in your world, women like me are entertainment, diversions, secrets. We're never the ones you marry. We're the ones you remember fondly while you live your real life with your real wife. I would never... You don't know what you do because you've never had to choose. It's easy to say pretty words on a dark pier where no one can see us. But what happens when your father finds out? When society learns that Harrison Vanderbilt is involved with an Italian immigrant seamstress, you think your family will accept that. You think you'll give up your name, your fortune, your entire identity for me. The questions hung in the air like accusations. Harrison wanted to protest, to insist he would absolutely make that choice. But the truth was, Elena was right. He had no idea what he would actually do when pushed to the brink. The real test hadn't come yet. I don't have all the answers, he admitted, but I know that walking away from you feels impossible. That has to mean something. It means we're both fools. But Elena smiled as she said it, and Harrison felt his heart leap. Come, I want to show you something. She led him off the pier and along the waterfront to a small building, a former warehouse converted into living quarters. Inside, the space was sparse but clean, a single room with a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a small stove. Candlelight flickered from several corners. This is where I come when I need to be alone, Elena explained. My uncle owns the building, rents most of it to dock workers. But this room, he lets me use. Sometimes I need escape from the tenement, from my family's needs, from the constant noise. This is my sanctuary. Harrison looked around the humble space and saw more beauty in it than in all 70 rooms of his family mansion, because this was Eleanor's, her private world, and she had trusted him enough to share it. Thank you, he said simply, for bringing me here. Elena removed her cloak and hung it on a nail by the door. Underneath, she wore a deep green dress that Harrison hadn't seen before. Not fancy, but carefully made. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. I wanted somewhere we could talk without worrying about being seen. Somewhere honest. She moved to the table where bread, cheese, and wine waited. Nothing fancy, but it's ours for tonight. They sat, they ate, they talked, and slowly the walls they'd both carefully maintained began to crumble. Elena told him about her childhood in Naples, about the poverty that had driven her family to immigrate, about the ship journey that had taken 3 weeks, crammed in steerage with hundreds of other desperate families, about arriving in New York and realizing that America's streets weren't paved with gold. They were paved with broken dreams and back-breaking work. My father believed, she said softly, believed we'd make a better life here, and maybe we did in some ways, but it cost him everything. 12-hour days at the docks, never complaining, never resting, until the day a cargo net broke and... She stopped, swallowing hard. They didn't even stop work to help him, just moved his body aside and kept loading the ship. Harrison reached across the table and took her hand. No words seemed adequate. That's why I get angry when rich men come to our neighborhood looking for adventure, Eleanor continued, because to you it's exotic, thrilling. For us, it's just survival. Every single day is a fight to keep our heads above water, and you're sitting in a lifeboat, wondering what it's like to swim. You're right. And I'm sorry. Sorry for my privilege. Sorry for my ignorance. Sorry that the world is built this way. Don't apologize for things you can't control. Elena squeezed his hand. Tell me something. If you could change your life completely, what would you do? Harrison considered the question seriously. I'd want to do something meaningful. Build something. Create something. Not just maintain what my family already has. I've always been interested in architecture, designing buildings that serve a purpose beyond displays of wealth, schools, libraries, places that actually help people. But my father says that's beneath a Vanderbilt, that our role is to own things, not build them. That's sad. Having resources to make a difference, but being told you're not allowed to use them. Elena stood and moved to the window, looking out at the dark river. I dream sometimes about opening my own dress shop. Not just doing piecework for someone else, but designing and creating, hiring other immigrant women, giving them fair wages, teaching them skills so they can support their families. She laughed, but it sounded bitter. Impossible dreams for a girl like me. Why impossible? Harrison stood and moved behind her. You're talented, hard-working, smart. Because talent and hard work mean nothing without capital. A shop requires money for rent, materials, equipment, money I'll never have. So instead, I'll marry Antonio Lombardi, have 6 children, and spend my life making bread and mending clothes. It's a good life, an honest life, just not mine. The pain in her voice broke something in Harrison. He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. What if it didn't have to be that way? What if... Don't. Elena pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't paint fantasies that will make reality harder to bear. We have tonight. We have one more night. Then we go back to our separate worlds. That's the deal. And if I don't want to go back? You don't have a choice. Neither of us do. But there were tears in her eyes now, betraying her calm words. Harrison pulled her close, and Elena didn't resist. They stood by the window, holding each other as the city breathed around them. This moment, this perfect, impossible moment, was all they had, and they both knew it. Dance with me, Harrison said suddenly. There's no music. We don't need music. So they danced in the candlelit warehouse room to a melody only they could hear, slow and close and desperate. Eleanor's head rested on Harrison's shoulder. His hand pressed against the small of her back. They moved in small circles, neither wanting the song to end. This is the second night, Eleanor whispered. The second of 3. One more, then it's over, unless it doesn't have to be. Eleanor pulled back to look at him. Harrison, be realistic. Even if you wanted to be with me, truly with me, not as a secret, what would that look like? You'd be disowned, shunned by society, cut off from your family. And for what? A seamstress who can't even give you the life you're accustomed to? Maybe I don't want the life I'm accustomed to. You say that now. But when the reality hit, when you couldn't go to your clubs or attend parties or do business with people who mattered, when your mother looked at you with disappointment and your father called you a disgrace, how long before you resented me for it? The questions cut deep because Harrison had no good answers. He wanted to believe he'd choose love over duty, passion over propriety. But Elena was asking him to imagine giving up everything he'd ever known, everything he was, for a future that was uncertain at best, disastrous at worst. I don't know, he admitted, the words painful. I don't know if I'm brave enough, strong enough, and I hate myself for that uncertainty. At least you're honest. Elena touched his face gently. That's more than most men would be. Most would make grand promises they'd never keep, just to get what they wanted. But you... She smiled sadly. You're telling me the truth even when it hurts. That's something. They stood in silence, the enormity of their situation pressing down on them. Two people from different worlds, drawn together by something neither could fully explain or control. Wanting something they couldn't have, knowing they should walk away, unable to do it. "One more night," Eleanor finally said. "That's what we agreed. One more chance to have something beautiful before reality wins." "Where?" Harrison asked, already knowing he'd go anywhere she asked. "The Astor Ball." Harrison blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What?" "I know it sounds insane, but hear me out." Elena's eyes gleamed with something between recklessness and determination. "You have to attend that ball anyway. Your family expects it. Margaret Astor expects it. But what if, just for one night, you had something real there? What if I could see your world the way you've seen mine?" "Eleanor, that's impossible. You'd be recognized as what? A servant? An interloper? Maybe, or maybe, with the right dress and the right story, I'd be just another guest. Mrs. Astor invites hundreds of people. She doesn't personally know them all. With proper clothes and enough confidence, I could blend in, just for a few hours, one dance in your world before we go back to reality. It's too dangerous. If you were exposed, I'd be humiliated and thrown out. But so what? I'm already nobody to those people. Being officially recognized as nobody doesn't change my life. But you..." Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost pleading. "You spend that night engaged, or as good as engaged, to Margaret Astor. That's when your path gets sealed. Your future gets locked in. Don't you want one real moment before that happens? One true memory to carry with you?" Harrison's mind raced. She was right that the Astor Ball was the unofficial deadline. His family had made that clear. By the end of that evening, he was expected to have secured an understanding with Margaret. His bachelor days would be over. His fate would be decided. "How would you even get the right clothes?" he asked, already halfway to agreeing despite every rational objection. "Let me worry about that. I'm a seamstress, remember. I know how to transform fabric into magic. I know which styles are fashionable. I can create a dress that will make me look like I belong in that ballroom." Her hands gripped his arms. "Please, Harrison, give me this. Give us this. One night where we don't have to hide. One night where I can dance with you without worrying who's watching. One perfect, impossible night before we say goodbye forever." Every instinct Harrison had said this was a terrible idea. Too risky, too complicated, too likely to end in disaster. But looking at Elena's face, seeing the desperate hope there mixed with resignation, he found himself nodding. "One night," he agreed. "The Astor Ball. But Elena, if anything goes wrong, then we run. Together. At least for those few minutes before reality catches us." She pulled him down and kissed him, soft and fierce and full of everything they couldn't say out loud. When they finally pulled apart, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "This is insane." "Completely," Eleanor smiled. "But isn't that what you wanted? Something real, something that breaks all the rules. Well, congratulations. We're about to break every rule there is." They stayed in the warehouse until nearly dawn, talking and planning and stealing moments of closeness they knew wouldn't last. When the sky began to lighten, they reluctantly separated. Elena pulled her cloak on. Harrison straightened his borrowed clothes. "One more night," Elena repeated at the door. "One more night," Harrison echoed. They parted ways at the waterfront, each returning to their separate worlds. Harrison slipped back into the mansion just as servants began their morning routines. He collapsed into bed, exhausted but unable to sleep, his mind spinning with impossible plans. Elena walked back to the tenement as the neighborhood woke. Her mother was already up, starting breakfast. "Long night," her mother observed without judgment. "Couldn't sleep. Went for a walk. In your good dress, with your hair carefully arranged." Her mother shook her head. "Elena, sweet girl, whatever you're planning, be careful. The world is not kind to women who dare too much." "I know, Mama." "But you're going to do it anyway?" "Yes." Her mother sighed, then hugged her tightly. Then at least promise me you'll remember who you are, where you came from. No matter what happens, these are your people. This is your home. Don't lose yourself chasing a dream that was never meant for you." Eleanor hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of bread and soap. "I promise." But even as she said it, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep, because she had already started losing herself the moment Harrison Vanderbilt first smiled at her. Already started imagining a life beyond her circumstances. Already started believing, just a little, that maybe impossible things could happen. If you're enjoying this story of forbidden love and daring choices, hit that like button now. This is just the beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The third night was coming. The Astor Ball. The moment when everything would either shatter into pieces or transform into something unprecedented. Harrison had 3 weeks to prepare. Eleanor had 3 weeks to create the perfect disguise, and neither of them had any idea just how spectacularly their plan would explode. But in that moment, walking away from their second night together as the city came alive around them, they both felt the same thing. Hope. Dangerous, foolish, beautiful hope. The kind that could save you or destroy you, depending on how far you were willing to fall. The second night was over. The third was waiting. And New York society was about to face a scandal that would be talked about for generations. The 3 weeks between the second and third night passed in agonizing slowness for Harrison and desperate urgency for Eleanor. They didn't see each other during that time. Both agreed it was too risky, but they exchanged letters through Harrison's trusted valet Peter, who had served the family for 20 years and kept more Vanderbilt secrets than anyone would ever know. Harrison's letters were long and conflicted. He wrote about his growing horror at his own world, now that he'd seen it through Elena's eyes. The waste, the excess, the casual cruelty disguised as social order. He wrote about his parents' increasing pressure regarding Margaret Astor, the wedding plans already being whispered about, the future being mapped without his consent. Elena's letters were shorter but more practical. She wrote about the dress she was creating, from fabric she'd borrowed from the dress shop where she worked, fabric destined for a client who'd cancelled an order, deep burgundy silk with black lace overlay. She wrote about studying society pages in newspapers, learning the names and faces of the people who would be at the ball. She wrote about practicing her posture, her accent, her way of moving, transforming herself into someone who could pass for one of them, at least for a few hours. But beneath the practical details, both letters carried the same undercurrent. Fear. Not of being caught, but of what would happen afterward, because they both knew the third night couldn't truly be the end. Something had shifted between them, something too big to contain in 3 stolen evenings. Harrison sat in his father's library 5 days before the ball, pretending to review railroad contracts, while his mind wandered to burgundy silk and amber eyes. "Harrison," his father's voice cut through his thoughts. "Are you listening?" "Yes, Father." "Then what did I just say about the Eastern expansion?" Harrison had no idea. "Could you repeat that?" His father set down his papers with exaggerated patience. "What is wrong with you lately? You're distracted, absent. Your mother says you've been sneaking out at night. Are you gambling, drinking, keeping inappropriate company?" "No, sir, just restless." "Well, channel that restlessness into productive directions. The Astor Ball is in 5 days. Margaret Astor is an excellent match, beautiful, well-bred, intelligent enough to be interesting, but not so intelligent as to be difficult. Her father and I have discussed terms. Unofficially, you understand. But everyone expects an announcement soon." Harrison's throat tightened. "Have I no say in this?" "You have every say, if you can present a better option." His father leaned back, studying him. "Is there someone else? Some woman you prefer?" The question hung in the air. This was Harrison's chance. He could tell the truth, could say yes, there's someone else, could begin the fight for Elena that she deserved. But the words stuck in his throat, because telling his father meant making it real. meant forcing a confrontation he wasn't sure he'd win, meant potentially losing everything, family, fortune, name, with no guarantee Eleanor would even want that sacrifice. "No," he said finally. "There's no one else." The lie tasted like ash. His father nodded, satisfied. "Good, then we'll proceed as planned. Wear your best evening clothes. Your mother has arranged for you to escort Margaret during the opening procession. Make her feel special, Harrison. Make her believe she's the only woman in the room." "Yes, father." Harrison left the library, feeling like a coward. He'd had his chance to fight for something real, and he'd chosen safety instead, just like Elena had predicted. The thought made him sick. That night, he received another letter from Elena, shorter than usual, more direct. "Harrison, I've finished the dress. It's beautiful. Or as beautiful as I can make it with limited resources. I've memorized the guest list, learned the right way to curtsy, to hold a wine glass, to make polite conversation about nothing. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. But I need to know something before Thursday night. Are you doing this because you want one last adventure before settling into your real life? Or are you doing this because you're actually considering choosing something different? I need the truth, because if this is just a fantasy for you, I can handle that. I'll come to the ball, we'll have our dance, and then I'll disappear from your life forever. No regrets, no recriminations. But if there's any part of you that's thinking about a real future, even if you're not sure, even if you're terrified, then tell me now, because the way I prepare for Thursday night depends on your answer. Don't write back with pretty words or noble intentions. Just tell me the truth, Elena." Harrison read the letter 3 times. Then he sat at his desk with paper and pen, trying to find the truth beneath his own confusion and fear. "Elena, the truth is, I don't know what I'm capable of. I want to believe I'd choose you over everything else. I want to believe I'm brave enough to walk away from my name, my family, my entire world. But I've never been tested, never had to make a choice that cost me everything. What I do know is this. I think about you constantly. I dream about you. I measure every moment of my day against those hours we spent together. My real life feels like a performance. Only with you do I feel genuine. Is that love? I don't know. I've never been in love before. But if love is wanting someone's happiness more than your own, then yes. Because the thought of you trapped in a marriage to someone you don't want, working yourself to exhaustion to support your family, never pursuing your dream of owning a dress shop, that breaks something in me. I can't promise I'll make the right choice Thursday night. Can't promise I'll be brave enough, but I can promise I'll be honest in the moment. Whatever I decide, it will be real. No more hiding, no more pretending. That's the best truth I have to offer. Harrison." He sent the letter with Peter that night. 2 days later, he received Elena's response. Just 4 words, "I'll be there." The day of the Astor ball arrived cold and clear. Snow had fallen the night before, covering New York in pristine white that would turn to brown slush by afternoon. Harrison woke early, unable to sleep. His evening clothes had been laid out. Black tailcoat, white waistcoat, perfectly pressed shirt. His shoes gleamed, his cufflinks, gold with the Vanderbilt crest, sat in their velvet box. He dressed mechanically, his mind elsewhere. In the tenement in the Lower East Side, Elena would be preparing too, transforming herself into someone who could walk through the doors of the Astor mansion without raising immediate suspicion. The audacity of her plan was breathtaking. The danger was enormous. If she were caught, she'd be publicly humiliated. If he were seen with her, questions would be asked. If anyone discovered the truth of their relationship, both their reputations would be destroyed. His family would be scandalized. Her family would be shamed. Everything could fall apart. And yet, he couldn't wait to see her. The Astor mansion blazed with light when Harrison's carriage arrived at 8 o'clock. Mrs. Caroline Astor, the Mrs. Astor, the gatekeeper of New York society, stood in the receiving line with her husband and daughter. Harrison kissed Mrs. Astor's gloved hand, complimented her exquisite taste, and smiled at Margaret Astor as if she were the answer to every question he'd ever asked. Margaret was lovely, blonde hair artfully arranged, green eyes bright with intelligence, figure perfect in a white gown that probably cost more than most families earned in a year. She was everything she should be, graceful, charming, appropriate, and Harrison felt absolutely nothing. "You look beautiful tonight, Miss Astor," he said dutifully. "Thank you, Mr. Vanderbilt. Mother says you'll escort me during the procession." "It would be my honor." They made small talk. Easy, meaningless conversation about the weather, the decorations, mutual acquaintances. Margaret laughed at his mild jokes. Harrison smiled at her observations. They performed their roles perfectly. All the while, Harrison's eyes scanned the ballroom, looking for burgundy silk, for dark hair, for amber eyes that would set his world on fire. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, walls draped in gold fabric, flowers imported from God knows where, creating gardens of color in the dead of winter. A full orchestra played from the raised platform. Tables groaned under the weight of food most people would never taste. The cream of New York society circulated in their finest clothing, each trying to outshine the others. Harrison saw railroad barons and shipping magnates, senators and judges, old money and new. The women wore enough jewels to fund a small country. The men discussed business and politics in clusters. Everyone smiled. Everyone played their part in the grand performance of Gilded Age society. And Harrison had never felt more like a fraud. 9 o'clock came and went. No sign of Elena. Harrison's stomach knotted with worry. Had she changed her mind? Been unable to complete her disguise? Gotten caught before she even arrived? The orchestra began the opening procession. Harrison offered his arm to Margaret. They joined the parade of couples circling the ballroom in a formal promenade. Everyone watched. Everyone judged. Everyone expected an announcement before the night ended. Margaret pressed closer to his side. "Father says your families have been discussing arrangements." "Yes." What else could he say? "I want you to know I have no objections. You're a good man, Harrison. Kind, thoughtful. We could have a pleasant life together." Pleasant. The word landed like a death sentence. A pleasant life, a pleasant marriage. Pleasant children and pleasant conversations, and pleasant years stretching into a pleasant eternity. "Margaret, oh my." Margaret's attention shifted to someone across the room. "Do you know her?" "I don't recognize her from any of the families." Harrison followed her gaze, and his heart stopped. Elena. She stood near the entrance, partially obscured by other guests, but unmistakably herself. The burgundy dress fit perfectly, the neckline modest but elegant, the skirt flowing in current fashion. She'd done something to her hair, pinned it up in an elaborate style that made her look older, more sophisticated. She wore no jewels except simple pearl earrings. Her face was composed, confident, showing none of the nervousness she must feel. She looked like she belonged there, like she'd been born to stand in that ballroom, like she was every bit as worthy as any other woman present, and she was looking directly at Harrison with an expression that asked 1,000 questions. "Probably some minor family from Boston," Harrison managed to say, his voice rougher than intended. "Mrs. Astor invites so many people." But Margaret was still watching Elena with curiosity. "She's very striking, in an unusual way, almost foreign." The word hung between them. Foreign, different, not one of us. Margaret didn't mean it cruelly. She was simply observing. But Harrison heard the unspoken message, "That woman doesn't belong here." The procession ended. The dancing began. Harrison knew he should ask Margaret for the first waltz. Knew that's what everyone expected. Knew it would seal his fate as surely as a signature on a contract. Instead, he turned to Margaret with his most charming smile. "Would you excuse me for just a moment? I see someone I must greet. Family obligation." "Of course." Margaret was too well-bred to show disappointment. Harrison moved through the crowd toward Eleanor, his heart pounding. Around him, conversations continued. Music played. The party swirled on, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Elena watched him approach with something between fear and defiance on her face. When he reached her, they stood for a moment in charged silence. "You came," Harrison finally said. "I said I would. You look..." He couldn't find words adequate. "You look extraordinary. I look expensive. It's amazing what the right dress and enough confidence can accomplish." But her hands trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. "I told the doorman I was Miss Elena Romano from the Philadelphia Romanos. Apparently that was convincing enough." "How long can you stay?" "As long as my nerve holds. Or until someone recognizes me from the dress shop and asks why their seamstress is pretending to be a guest." Elena glanced around the ballroom, taking in the opulence. "This is your world. It's even more excessive than I imagined. It's grotesque. It's beautiful and grotesque both at once." She met his eyes. "Dance with me. That's why I came." "One real dance in your world before I go back to mine." Harrison extended his hand. Elena placed hers in it, and together they moved onto the dance floor as the orchestra began a Viennese waltz. They danced like they had in the church basement, but this time in front of hundreds of watching eyes. This time with everything to lose. Harrison pulled her closer than was strictly proper. Elena let him, her body fitting against his, as if they'd been designed to move together. "Everyone is watching," Elena murmured. "Let them watch. They're wondering who I am, making guesses. Some of the women look jealous, some of the men look intrigued. Your Margaret Astor looks confused." "She's not my Margaret Astor. Not yet. But she will be if you don't do something dramatic." Elena looked up at him, her amber eyes serious. "This is it, Harrison. The third night, our last chance. After this dance, I'll disappear. You'll propose to Margaret. We'll both go on with our separate lives. Unless you choose something different. Right here, right now, in front of everyone." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But I need you to understand what that choice means. It means scandal. Disgrace, your family disowning you, society shunning you, all your advantages gone. And for what? A seamstress who can't even promise you'll be happy with your choice." The music swelled. They turned in perfect synchronization. Harrison felt the eyes of New York society on them, felt the weight of expectation, tradition, and duty pressing down like a physical force. This was the moment, the point of no return. Choose safety and comfort and a life mapped out by others, or choose uncertainty and struggle and the only person who'd ever made him feel truly alive. "I need to tell you something," Harrison said quietly, "about why I've been so hesitant, so uncertain." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do, because you deserve the whole truth." He took a breath. "I'm afraid, not of losing my family or my fortune or my place in society. I could survive all that. I'm afraid that I'll choose you, give up everything, and then you'll realize I'm not worth it. That I'm just a spoiled rich man who doesn't know how to do anything useful. That I'll become a burden instead of a partner. That you'll end up resenting me for dragging you into my mess." Elena's eyes softened. "You think I haven't thought about that? You think I don't have the same fears? That you'll choose me in a moment of passion and then regret it when reality sets in? Then we're both terrified. Completely terrified." She smiled slightly. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing what matters despite being afraid." The music was building toward its conclusion. Their time was running out. Soon the dance would end. Soon they'd have to decide. Soon everything would change or stay exactly the same. "What do you want, Elena?" Harrison asked. "Truly want, not what's practical or safe or expected. What does your heart want?" Elena's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back furiously. "I want impossible things. I want to open my dress shop and hire immigrant women and pay them fairly. I want to design beautiful clothes that make ordinary women feel extraordinary. I want to wake up next to someone who sees me as an equal partner, not a servant or a trophy. I want—" She paused, then said the most dangerous words of all. "I want you, even though it's insane, even though it will cost us both everything. I want you." Harrison's heart felt too large for his chest. "Then let's be insane together." "Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no taking it back. I've never been more sure of anything." The music reached its final crescendo. The dance was ending. This was it, the moment that would define the rest of their lives. Harrison stopped dancing. Elena stopped with him. They stood in the center of the ballroom, still holding each other, while couples continued to waltz around them. People began to notice. Conversations paused. Heads turned. And in the sudden spreading silence, Harrison Vanderbilt made his choice. He pulled Elena closer and kissed her. Not a polite society kiss, a real kiss, passionate and desperate and absolutely unmistakable in its meaning. The ballroom erupted, gasps, exclamations. Someone, probably Mrs. Astor, shrieked in outrage. The music stuttered to a halt. Margaret Astor made a sound like a wounded bird. Harrison's mother called his name in a voice that promised consequences. But Harrison didn't care, because for the first time in his 28 years, he was choosing his own path, making his own decision, claiming his own future. When they finally pulled apart, Elena was crying. Happy tears or terrified tears, Harrison couldn't tell. Maybe both. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." "We did it." He took her hand. "Now we run." They ran. Through the ballroom, past shocked faces and pointing fingers and scandalized whispers. Out the front door, down the steps, into the snowy New York night. Behind them, they could hear shouting, Harrison's father's voice, his mother's wail, the beginning of the biggest scandal New York society had seen in decades. But they didn't stop. They ran until they reached the street, until the cold air burned their lungs, until they were far enough away that the sounds of outrage faded into the night. Finally, they stopped in a small park, both breathing hard. Snow fell gently around them. Elena's elaborate hairstyle had come partially undone. Harrison's perfect evening clothes were disheveled. They looked at each other and started laughing, the slightly hysterical laughter of people who'd just done something irreversible. "What did we just do?" Elena asked between laughs. "Something very stupid or very brave. I'm not sure which." "Both. Definitely both." She sobered slightly. "Harrison, your family will disown me, probably by morning. And you know what? I don't care. Let them have their mansion and their money and their perfect society. I choose this. I choose you. I choose us." Elena touched his face with her cold hands. "You understand what you're giving up? What our life will be like? I don't have money. Don't have connections. Can't give you anything except everything that matters." Harrison pulled her close. "I don't need mansions or society balls or railroad empires. I need this. Someone who sees me as I actually am. Someone who challenges me to be better. Someone who makes me feel alive." That sounds very romantic. But tomorrow, when the reality hits, then we'll face it together. He kissed her forehead. "I'm done living the life everyone else planned for me. Done being who they expect me to be. If that means starting over with nothing, then that's what we'll do." Snow continued to fall, covering them in white. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang midnight. The third night was ending. But unlike they'd planned, it wasn't ending in goodbye. It was ending in hello, to a new life, a new beginning, an impossible future they'd build together. "We need a plan," Elena said practically. "Your family will come looking for you. So will mine once they hear what happened. We need somewhere to go, somewhere to hide until we figure out what comes next." "I know a place." Harrison smiled. "An old friend from college moved to Boston, got himself disowned for marrying a suffragette. He's been after me for years to visit. Said I could always use his guest house if I needed refuge from family pressure. I think this qualifies. Boston, Elena tested the word. Far enough away to be safe, big enough to disappear into, small enough that we might actually build something new. She nodded. When do we leave? Tomorrow, before anyone can stop us. Harrison took both her hands. Elena Russo, are you sure? Absolutely certain, because if we leave tomorrow, we leave everything behind. No coming back, no changing our minds. Elena looked at him with those amber eyes that had first caught his attention on a fire escape 3 weeks ago. Eyes that held strength and vulnerability and courage and fear all at once. I'm sure, she said, terrified but sure. Let's go build impossible things together. They sealed the promise with a kiss, there in the snowy park, while New York City slept around them and scandal spread through the mansions of Fifth Avenue. They'd broken every rule, defied every expectation, chosen love over duty, passion over prudence, each other over everything else. It was the most reckless thing either of them had ever done, and also somehow the first truly honest thing. The first real choice in lives that had been scripted by circumstance and obligation. The fourth chapter of their story was ending, but the final chapter, the one that would determine whether their courage led to happiness or regret, was just beginning. The scandal broke like a wave over New York society. By breakfast the next morning, every household on Fifth Avenue knew that Harrison Vanderbilt had kissed an unknown woman at the Astor ball and then fled the scene. Speculation ran wild. Some said she was a European princess traveling incognito. Others whispered she was an actress. The most accurate rumors that she was an Italian immigrant seamstress were dismissed as too absurd to be credible. But Harrison and Elena didn't hear any of it. They were already on a train to Boston, having left before dawn, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and what little money Harrison had managed to withdraw from his personal account before the banks opened. The train rumbled north through a white landscape. Elena sat by the window, still wearing her burgundy dress, now rumpled and stained with snow. Harrison sat beside her in his evening clothes, looking like an escaped bridegroom. Other passengers stared, but neither of them cared. Tell me about your friend, Elena said quietly. The one in Boston. Marcus Sullivan. We were roommates at Harvard. His family owned textile mills, not Vanderbilt-level wealth, but comfortable. Then he fell in love with Catherine, a woman who believed in votes for women and equal rights and all sorts of revolutionary ideas. His family gave him an ultimatum, Catherine or inheritance. Harrison smiled. He chose Catherine. They've been married 3 years now, happy from what his letters say, struggling financially but genuinely happy. That could be us. That will be us. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm scared, Harrison. Good, me too. If we weren't scared, we'd be idiots. We might be idiots anyway. Probably. He kissed the top of her head. But we're idiots together. They arrived in Boston in late afternoon. Marcus Sullivan met them at the station. Harrison had sent a telegram from New York that morning. Just 2 words. Need refuge. Marcus had responded immediately. Come now. Marcus was a tall man with unruly red hair and the kind of smile that suggested he found the entire world amusing. He embraced Harrison like a brother, then turned to Elena with genuine warmth. So you're the woman worth burning down the Vanderbilt empire for. I like you already. Elena blinked, surprised. You're not shocked? Disapproving? Why would I be? I did the same thing 3 years ago. Catherine's inside making dinner. She's excited to meet you both. Says it's nice to know we're not the only crazy ones. He grabbed their bags. Their complete lack of luggage immediately noted and not commented on. Come, you both look exhausted. The Sullivan house was modest by Vanderbilt standards. Just 8 rooms, simply furnished, with books everywhere and a general air of comfortable chaos. Catherine Sullivan was a whirlwind of energy, all black hair and flashing eyes and opinions stated as facts. "Finally," she exclaimed when they entered. "Another couple brave enough to choose love over money. We were starting to think Marcus and I were alone in our insanity." She hugged Eleanor without hesitation. "You must be Eleanor. Marcus told me what little Harrison's telegram said. We want to hear everything. Over dinner. Simple food, well prepared, nothing like the elaborate feasts Harrison was accustomed to. They told the story. The fire escape, the church social, the warehouse, the Astor ball, the kiss that changed everything." Catherine cried. Marcus laughed and slapped Harrison on the back, and both of them offered something more valuable than sympathy: practical help. "The guest house is yours for as long as you need it," Marcus said. "No rent. Consider it payment for all those times you covered for me at Harvard when I snuck out to see Catherine. And I know people who might hire you," Catherine added, looking at Eleanor. "A friend of mine runs a progressive dress shop downtown. She's always looking for skilled seamstresses, not much money, but honest work. As for you," Marcus turned to Harrison, "can you do actual labor, or did your family raise you to be purely ornamental?" "I can learn," Harrison said firmly. "I'm not afraid of work." "Good. Because I need help at the mill, nothing glamorous. Inventory management, basic bookkeeping, floor supervision. But it pays enough to live on if you're not trying to maintain a mansion." Elena and Harrison exchanged glances. It was more than they'd dared hope for. A place to stay, potential employment, friends who understood their situation because they'd lived it themselves. "Why are you helping us?" Elena asked quietly. "You barely know me." Catherine reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Because 3 years ago, Marcus and I were exactly where you are now, terrified, broke, disowned by our families, and if someone hadn't helped us, given us a chance when we had nothing, I don't know what would have happened. So we help others the same way we were helped. That's how we build a better world, one crazy, courageous couple at a time." That night, Elena and Harrison lay together in the small guest house behind the Sullivan home. It was nothing like the mansions they'd come from, just 2 rooms simply furnished with a wood stove for heat and a basin for washing. But it was theirs, their first home, the beginning of their new life. "Are you having regrets?" Elena whispered in the darkness. "No. Are you?" "No. But I'm terrified of what comes next." Harrison pulled her closer. "Here's what comes next. Tomorrow I start working at Marcus's mill. You meet with Catherine's friend about the seamstress position. We figure out how to pay for food and fuel. We live like ordinary people because that's what we are now. Ordinary people trying to build an ordinary life. There's nothing ordinary about what we did." "No, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the extraordinary thing is choosing the ordinary when you could have had everything else." He paused. "I won't lie and say this will be easy. My family will never forgive me. Society will never accept you. We're going to struggle. But Eleanor, I've never felt more certain about anything than I am about this. About us." Elena turned to face him in the darkness. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise that if you do start to regret it, if the reality becomes too hard, you'll tell me. Don't martyr yourself out of pride. Don't stay with me out of obligation. I need to know that if you're here, it's because you genuinely want to be. I promise. But only if you promise the same. If you start resenting me for the life you gave up, the family you left behind, the struggles we face, tell me. We face truth together, or we don't face it at all. Deal." They sealed the promise with a kiss, then fell asleep, tangled together, warm despite the winter cold seeping through the walls. And for the first time in weeks, both of them slept deeply, without anxiety or fear. Because whatever happened next, they'd face it together. The next weeks were harder than either of them expected. Harrison started work at the textile mill and discovered that managing inventory meant 12-hour days of physical labor he'd never experienced. His soft hands blistered, then calloused. His muscles ached constantly. He came home each night exhausted to his bones. Elena started at the dress shop and found that working for Catherine's friend meant not just sewing, but dealing with demanding customers, managing other seamstresses, and meeting impossible deadlines. Her eyes strained from long hours bent over delicate work. Her back hurt from sitting hunched over her sewing machine. Money was tight. The little Harrison had managed to bring from New York ran out within 2 weeks. They lived on their combined wages, which meant simple food, no luxuries, and careful budgeting of every penny. Sometimes they ate bread and cheese for dinner 3 nights in a row because meat was too expensive, but they were happy, not the constant giddy happiness of their 3 stolen nights. Real happiness. The kind built on shared struggle and small victories, the happiness of coming home to someone who understood, of facing challenges together, of building something genuine instead of inheriting something hollow. Letters began to arrive. First from Harrison's family, his mother begging him to come home, promising forgiveness if he'd just abandoned that woman and returned to his proper place. His father's letters were colder, listing everything Harrison had thrown away, every opportunity he'd wasted, every way he'd disappointed the family name. Harrison read them once, then filed them away unanswered. Elena's letters were worse. Her mother wrote in broken English, heartbroken and confused. Why had Elena thrown away her chance at a good marriage to Antonio? Why had she shamed the family by running away with a rich man who would surely abandon her once the novelty wore off? How could Elena leave her sisters when they needed her? Those letters made Elena cry, made her question their choice, made her wonder if courage was just another word for selfishness. "Maybe I should write back," she said one night, tears streaming down her face. "Explain. Make them understand." "Do you think they'd listen?" Harrison asked gently. "No, they see what they expect to see. A foolish girl who threw away her future for a rich man's fancy. They can't imagine this is real, that we could actually build a life together. Then show them. When we succeed, and we will succeed, show them that love isn't a fantasy. It's the foundation we build everything else on." 6 months passed. Spring came to Boston, bringing warmth and the promise of renewal. Elena's seamstress work improved until she was the most requested craftsperson in the shop. Catherine's friend offered to make her a partner if Elena could contribute capital. Not much, just $500 to help expand the business. Harrison had been promoted to shift manager at the mill, with a small increase in wages. He'd also begun designing efficiency improvements that saved the company money. Marcus was impressed. "You have a good head for business. The Vanderbilts trained you better than they knew." Between their combined savings and a small loan from Marcus and Catherine, Elena scraped together the $500. She became a co-owner of Madame Leblanc's dress shop. In May of 1890, the shop was renamed Leblanc and Rousseau Designs in June. The day Elena's name went on the shop window, she stood outside staring at it for 10 minutes. Harrison stood beside her, his arm around her waist, understanding that this moment represented something bigger than a business partnership. It represented proof that their impossible choice had led somewhere real, somewhere good. "You did it," he said softly. "Your dream. You actually made it happen." "We did it," Elena corrected. "I couldn't have gotten here without you, without your support, your belief that I was capable of this. All I did was see what was always true, that you were extraordinary." But the happiness was complicated by loss. Elena's family never wrote again after her mother's final letter condemning her choice. Harrison's family sent a legal notice formally disowning him and removing him from all inheritance considerations. They were building something beautiful, but it was built on the ashes of what they'd left behind. Still, they persisted, drew closer, learned to navigate their new life with its hardships and small joys, learned that love wasn't just the passionate intensity of stolen nights, but also the steady commitment of ordinary days, the choice to show up, to work hard, to support each other through exhaustion and doubt and fear. 1 year after the Astor ball, Harrison proposed properly. Not with a Vanderbilt diamond worth a fortune, but with a simple silver band he'd commissioned from a local jeweler, engraved with words only they would understand. 3 nights, forever, Elena cried when he slipped it on her finger. You already gave up everything for me. You don't need to marry me too. I'm not marrying you out of obligation. I'm marrying you because after a year of living this life I can't imagine any other. You're my partner, my best friend. The person I want beside me for every struggle and every triumph still to come. They married in a small ceremony at Marcus and Catherine's house, with just their 4 friends as witnesses. No society wedding, no elaborate reception, just simple vows spoken with absolute sincerity, promising to face whatever came next together. And what came next was success. Slow, hard-won, built brick by brick. Elena's partnership in the dress shop flourished. Within 2 years, LeBlanc and Rousseau Designs was one of the most sought-after dress shops in Boston, known for treating employees fairly and creating beautiful clothes at reasonable prices. Harrison continued rising through Marcus's mill until eventually Marcus made him a full partner. Together, they transformed the business from barely profitable to thriving, all while maintaining the ethical standards that had driven Marcus's father to bankruptcy. Turns out you could treat workers fairly and still make money. You just had to be creative. 5 years after leaving New York, Harrison and Elena purchased their own home, modest but comfortable, in a neighborhood of artists and progressive thinkers and people who didn't care about family names or social status. They filled it with books and laughter and friends who valued character over pedigree. They never returned to New York, never reconciled with their families. The cost of their choice remained permanent, but they built something better than what they'd left behind. A life based on genuine partnership, mutual respect, and the radical idea that love was more important than legacy. Did they sometimes wonder what might have been? If Harrison had married Margaret Astor, if Elena had married Antonio Lombardi, if they'd chosen safety over courage? Yes, on hard days, when money was tight or work was overwhelming, or the weight of what they'd sacrificed felt too heavy, yes, they wondered. But then they'd look at each other across their simple dinner table, in their modest home, surrounded by the life they'd built together, and remember why they'd made that impossible choice. Because some things are worth burning down empires for. Some things matter more than comfort or acceptance or family approval. Some things, like genuine love, like partnership between equals, like the freedom to choose your own path, are worth any price. They'd paid that price, and neither of them regretted it, not even once. Subscribe to this channel right now so you never miss another story of courage and love that defies the impossible. These are the tales that remind us what truly matters. 20 years later, Harrison stood in the parlor of their Boston home, now expanded and renovated over 2 decades of gradual success. The house reflected their journey, part elegant, part practical, entirely theirs. Books lined every wall. Art from local painters covered the spaces between. It was sophisticated without being ostentatious, comfortable without being shabby. He was 58 now, his dark hair streaked with silver, lines around his eyes from 2 decades of laughter and occasional worry. He'd aged into himself in a way he never would have in New York, becoming someone genuine rather than someone performed. Through the window, he could see their garden where Elena sat with their daughter, Victoria, now 18 and preparing to attend the Boston Female Medical College. Their son, Marcus, named for the friend who'd saved them, was away at Harvard, studying architecture. Both children had grown up hearing stories of the night their parents had chosen courage over comfort. Both understood that real wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts. The front door opened. Elena entered, now 49, her dark hair touched with grey, her amber eyes as sharp as ever. She'd just returned from the 5th LeBlanc and Rousseau location opening. They'd expanded throughout New England, each shop maintaining their founding principles of fair wages and quality work. "You're staring out windows like a melancholy poet again," Eleanor teased, hanging up her coat. "Just thinking. About how it's been exactly 20 years since the Astor ball, since we ran out into the snow and changed everything." Elena moved beside him, slipping her hand into his. "Regrets? Not a single one. You? Only that it took me 24 years to meet you." She leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture as comfortable now as it had been new and electric 2 decades ago. "Do you ever think about them? Your family, what your life would have been?" Harrison considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. I heard my father died 5 years ago. My mother followed 2 years later. My brothers run the railroad empire. Apparently quite successfully. They're richer than ever, more powerful than ever, and from everything I read in the papers, utterly miserable. And you're happy. Extraordinarily happy. Different kind of happy than I ever imagined. But yes." He turned to face her fully. "We built something real, Elena. Not just the businesses or this house or our children. We built a life based on actual values instead of inherited ones. We built a partnership. We built proof that the impossible can happen if you're brave enough to choose it. We also built calluses and grey hair and permanent worry lines," Elena added with a smile. "All worth it." Victoria called from the garden. Something about medical school applications. Elena squeezed Harrison's hand once more, then moved to help their daughter. Harrison watched them together, his brilliant wife and their equally brilliant daughter, and marveled at the life they'd created. Not perfect, not easy, not anything like what either of them had been raised to expect, but real, genuine, built on choices made consciously rather than paths followed blindly. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Harrison and Eleanor sat together on their back porch, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill. The city lights of Boston glowed in the distance, but their neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. "Do you think they'd be proud?" Eleanor asked suddenly. "Our families, if they could see us now?" "I don't know. Your mother might be. She wanted security for you, and we've built that, just not the way she imagined." "My family," Harrison shrugged. "I don't think they have the capacity to see success outside their narrow definition. But I've stopped needing their approval." "When did that happen?" "The stopping of needing approval, gradually. Every year that passed, every success we achieved on our own terms, every moment of genuine happiness, it made their judgment matter less." He pulled her closer. "The truth is, Elena, we won. Not in the way they kept score, but in every way that actually matters." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. 20 years, 2 decades of proving that love could be a foundation strong enough to build an entire life upon. That courage could lead somewhere real, instead of crashing into inevitable disaster. That 2 people from impossible circumstances could choose each other and actually make it work. The cost had been permanent. Broken family ties never mended, social status never regained, certain doors forever closed. But the gain had been infinite. A life lived honestly, children raised with genuine values, love that deepened rather than faded, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they'd stayed true to themselves. "I love you," Harrison said simply. "I love you too," Elena replied. "Still, always, even after 20 years of your terrible jokes and habit of leaving books everywhere, and your obsessive organization and inability to throw anything away." They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who knew each other completely and loved each other anyway. Not despite the flaws, but including them, because real love wasn't about perfection, it was about choosing someone, fully and completely, and continuing to choose them through every challenge and change. Inside the house, their daughter practiced piano, a piece by Chopin, her father's favorite. Their son's latest letter sat on Harrison's desk, full of excitement about architectural theory and designs that could make buildings beautiful and functional for everyone, not just the wealthy. Both children carried forward the lessons their parents had taught by example, that courage matters, that love is a choice you make every day, and that building something real is worth any sacrifice. "Do you think our story is over?" Elena asked, breaking the silence. Harrison smiled. "Our story? No, it's just entering a new chapter, watching our children make their own choices, growing old together, maybe someday grandchildren. The best stories don't have tidy endings. They just keep unfolding, chapter after chapter, surprise after surprise. Then here's to the next chapter, and the one after that, and everyone's still to come." They raised imaginary glasses to the future, then settled deeper into their blankets, content to sit together as night fully descended and stars multiplied overhead. 20 years since they'd run from the Astor ballroom into an uncertain future. 20 years of proving that the impossible choice had been exactly right. The third night had ended 2 decades ago, but the life it had begun continued on, rich and full and genuine. And that, Elena and Harrison both understood, was the greatest success of all. Not just choosing love once in a dramatic moment, but choosing it again and again, in 1,000 ordinary ways, for 20 years and counting. Their families never reconciled, society never forgave. The world they'd left behind never welcomed them back, but they'd built a better world, together. From nothing but courage and love and stubborn determination. And in that world, they'd found everything that truly mattered. The epilogue of their love story wasn't an ending. It was proof that some choices, no matter how impossible they seem, lead exactly where they're meant to. And some loves, no matter how unlikely, are strong enough to build entire lives upon. Harrison and Elena had proven that, were still proving it, would keep proving it for whatever years remained. And that was worth more than all the Vanderbilt fortune ever could have bought. The story of Harrison and Eleanor teaches us that true courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing what matters most, despite being terrified. They came from different worlds, faced impossible obstacles, and risked everything for a chance at genuine love. The cost was real: broken families, lost fortunes, permanent exile from the only lives they'd known. But the reward was greater: a partnership built on honesty, a life lived on their own terms, and proof that love can be strong enough to build an entire world upon. Their legacy wasn't wealth or status, but children raised with genuine values and a life that demonstrated what's possible when two people choose courage over comfort. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply choose to be honest about what you want and brave enough to pursue it, no matter the cost. What did you think of Harrison and Elena's brave choice? Comment below telling us if you would have had the courage to do what they did. And don't forget to watch the next incredible story appearing on your screen right now.